Hi, this is Thymic Dad here. I'm going to do a video on midlife crisis and kind of, tie that back in a little bit to narcissism, just because there were some questions that I thought were relevant and interesting. So I thought I'd make a video to answer those. First off, the original video I did was with, very specific to my ex-wife who was married to for nearly 20 years. Then she went into a midlife crisis and started exhibiting the traits of a malignant narcissist. At that time, I dove headfirst and tried to learn as much as I could about the midlife crisis, and I found some interesting resources on that. And I also, spoke with relatives, friends, honestly, people I would just run into, at places that I was shopping at, and to get their stories. And they were very surprising. I mean, both in the diversity of experiences that people had, but also the commonalities. So I guess I'll start with the first question, and that is regarding the time period for how long does a person stay within that new mode once they have a midlife crisis. So, for example, say someone's going along, they turn 40 years old, and for whatever reason, it freaks them out, and they're like, oh my gosh, the way that I'm going to cope with the fact that I'm turning 40 is to pretend I'm 20 again. And so they suddenly get like crazy haircuts that are in style for 20-year-olds, throw away all their clothes and go buy clothes at Forever 21 or, I don't know, some other store and start dressing like they're 20. Maybe change their musical taste, and want to hang out with 20-year-olds. They don't want to hang out with people their own age. They want a friend group that is more, say, college aged. Again, very bizarre, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. So the question, I was asked was, how long does that last? And I guess the first thing to answer is, I would argue most of the time, as in at least 51% of the time, the answer is forever. It's crazy, but from my own personal experience, the experiences of friends and family, and even the stuff that I've researched online, sadly, the majority of people that go into a midlife crisis never come out. They just continue to live this delusional life. And so, I mean, if you, I'm trying to think of it. So, I knew a person who went through a midlife crisis, and this isn't my ex-wife, this is someone different. But they left their children, they left their husband, they left their, nice house in the suburbs, and it was very sudden. I mean, to everyone else, she left a note that was like 1 page long, just basically saying, "I'm leaving you." And she literally took the silverware. It was a hand-me-down silverware, family heirloom, to go sell at the pawn shop. And at that point, no one in the family knew where she was or spoke with her for 3 years. and piecing the pieces together. What had happened was she had been working at the VA hospital as an LPN, and needless to say, you have a bunch of vets and a woman. The vets are going to be, given the compliments, and some more vulgar than others. And the thing was that she was so starved for attention that she loved it, and so to her it became this option. And so finally at one point she said, okay, no, I'm going to go in this direction. So she ended up with a Vietnam vet, Harley dude, and like his social group, and did lots of drugs, lots of partying, and basically living on the edge of poverty, where basically they were a week away from being homeless at any given time. Got into right-wing conspiracy theories, being kind of weird. Everyone in her immediate family disowned her. Everyone in her extended family, originally was, open to receiving her back in, but she was such an embarrassment. I mean, to have this 40-something-year-old woman acting like she was 20 and just basically bragging about doing drugs, bragging about being, an old lady in a Harley gang, bragging about being part of a militia or something. And so they disowned her too. They're just like, we don't ever want to speak to you again. And so she went off to live the rest of her life as this loser. And as you can expect, when you have a bunch of Vietnam vets doing drugs, drinking, and partying all the time, they're dropping like flies. It's not a lifestyle that's conducive to living long. And so, she would just move from one Harley dude to another, and finally, they all died off, and then she died off. I mean, by the time she died, she was on a diet of cheap cigarettes and alcohol. And so, my point with that is that, many of these people that go into a midlife crisis, they never come out. They just become cartoon characters, caricatures. I mean, just jokes, losers, living their delusional lives. And, I just find it bizarre and gross. But so, that said, there are some who come back. So the stories that I've heard, there was a story I heard first person, and it was where this, woman had gone off, it's like, oh, I'm going to be 20 years old again, and did the party thing for, I think like 8, 9, 10 years. And at least in that situation, the family was like embarrassed by her, but kept the door, cracked open, and basically said, we're not going to put up with your crap, but if you want to knock it off and be a mature adult, you are always welcome back into the family. And so for the vast majority of, the 8, 9, 10 years, she was an immature idiot. But, I think it was a situation where she had like a relative that may have died or something like that, but she, or a granddaughter was born, and she, at least that registered with some part of her brain that if she wanted to be a part of that family and like be involved with her granddaughter or be there to grieve the death of the relative, she had to grow the hell up. I mean, she couldn't play that midlife crisis game anymore. She needed to be a mature adult. And so she came around. And it was interesting because it wasn't like it happened overnight. I mean, she realized this and she realized the direction that she wanted to go in. But, the way I remember it, it took a year or two of her to kind of transition out of that ridiculous, midlife crisis lifestyle that she was in and transition back to being an actual adult with actual maturity and responsibility and to be get back to where she needed to be with the family as a whole. I back when I dove headfirst into researching the midlife crisis and how to handle it, I came across a website which was by far the best resource I've ever found on it. And I don't remember the name of it. I'm sure if you Google, it's probably still there because it's by far the best. I mean, there's nothing that even came close. I was just hyper focused on the people's experience with the midlife crisis, specifically spouses, and what to expect, how to handle the situations, what to do, and also stories about like success or failure. So it was there that like I noticed that like there were so many stories of people just doing all they could to like keep that door open and just letting their spouse run around like they were single and 20 again and getting nowhere. I mean, that's their choice, their life. But there were some where they kept that door open and then say 6, 8, 10 years, the spouse kind of got tired of living the midlife crisis life and came back or, started staying home more. And again, it wasn't necessarily like they just showed up one day with their bags and said, okay, I'm done being an idiot. It was more of a gradual thing, again, over the course of like a year or two, kind of just transitioning back into being a mature adult that's not living a life of delusion. So again, my personal experience from speaking with, friends, family, myself, is that the percentage of people that come back from a midlife crisis is very low. I would say maybe 25%. And I would not be surprised if it's lower than that. That is my personal experience because, again, like I've known lots of people that have gone into midlife crisis, and out of all of those, I know one who has come back to reality. Reading stuff online, I think that they'll say 50%. I think that they're being optimistic, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it is as high as 50%, because I don't think anyone wants to see a loved one go off the deep end and just, swim out to the ocean and never come back. So that's where I would put that. I agree with, one of the commenters where I think it's interesting that, it's, 2023, people have known about the midlife crisis for, I don't know, 40, 50 years, maybe more. And I don't think there's anything in the DSM, I think that's the word for it, DSM, about the midlife crisis, or either labeling that as a disorder or a pathology, psychosis, neurosis, or anything like that. It's just I don't think it's in there, and it's amazing to me because it's so damaging. I mean, if you've seen the damage that having a spouse go through a midlife crisis does to the family, geez, it's like throwing a hand grenade in the middle of the living room. I mean, it is bad. And yet people just, to a large extent, people, I should say there's a subset of the population that pretends that the midlife crisis just doesn't exist, which I think is, I think it's hilarious, because it's like, if you haven't experienced it, be thankful. But you really have no right to say it doesn't exist. That's it's just being stupid. It's just being ignorant. It's really not wanting to believe the truth because it doesn't fit with your worldview. And I've seen that. I've seen that with both men and women. Though I think it's interesting that there is a subset of I wouldn't even call it feminism. I'd just say of say women in America or women in Western civilization that have decided to fight back against the perception of the midlife crisis as a bad thing, and that they'll argue that we should call it like a midlife blossoming, or something like that. I mean, they literally want to like rename it and frame it as, no, it's not a midlife crisis. It's when you get to be your honest and true self, and embrace your divine nature, or something like that. I mean, and it's just like, that's such crap. I mean, like I said, if you've ever seen the damage that a midlife crisis does to a family, you wouldn't say that crap, or you wouldn't even consider saying that crap. There's nothing, it's not blossoming. There's nothing good about it. It's like a psychosis. I mean, a person basically wakes up one day and decides that they're 20 years old and that they're going to rearrange their whole life to fit and, kind of feed this delusion that they're not 40, that they're actually 20. That's not healthy. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe I have to say that. That is not healthy. I don't care what label you give that. So, I mean, it's very surprising that it's not in the DSM, or that, that so many people just act like the midlife crisis doesn't exist, even though everyone knows somebody who's gone through it, or is going through it. So, and so, I did want to, do this video. I'll bring it back to narcissism a little bit, and that, like I said, I use the term narcissism to denote a system or a model of describing a set of traits and behaviors. I'm not a freaking psychologist. I'm not going to diagnose somebody. That's not my job. And if someone is born and then like they go through trauma as a child and then later on in life they become a narcissist, okay, they're a narcissist. But if someone's going along life fine and then all of a sudden they turn 40, they have a midlife crisis, and then they start exhibiting the traits and behaviors of a narcissist, I'm going to call them a narcissist. I really don't care what people think. If people say, well, they didn't have childhood trauma and they weren't a narcissist when they were 20, I don't care. I'm not dealing with them when they're 20. I'm not dealing with them when they're 5. I'm dealing with them when they're 40. And right now, they are acting and behaving and showing all the traits of a narcissist. So to me, that's what matters, because it helps me know, okay, this is how I need to treat them. This is how I need to approach them for my own safety, for my own mental and emotional health, and also what I can expect from them. And so in that respect, the model of the narcissist fits like a glove. And so with respect to the midlife crisis and narcissism, I'm not going to make, I think that it's ridiculous to start getting into this debate about, oh, well, they used to be a narcissist and then they were masking for 25 years. And then all of a sudden that came off and now they're showing that they're really a narcissist. Who cares? I mean, whether they were or not 20 years ago, I could not care less. And so if it makes you feel better to say, oh, well, they're not a narcissist, they're simply a person exhibiting many behaviors and traits of a narcissist, or narcissistic traits and behaviors, be my guest. If it makes you feel better, phrase things that way. So hopefully this video has been helpful.